Yo, what's good? Amateur Lore here, and today we're going to be looking at some elite college football teams that I feel like people somewhat forget about. Now, the diehard fans of these teams probably not, but maybe some of the casuals who just got into college football. Feel free to comment some teams you feel like would be a good addition if I ever make another video like this. My only requirements is that they can't have won the Natty or been in it. If you enjoy the content, be sure to leave a like and a sub. Now let's jump right into the video. So, this first entry might take some of you by surprise. Well, actually not really, because the team is in the thumbnail. But I bet besides the diehard Michigan fans that tune into some of my videos, most of you probably had no clue how close this Wolverine squad was to making it to the BCS National Championship game. So let's head over to the mitten and go back to the 2006 college football season to take a look at the 2006 Michigan Wolverines. A big reason I wanted to cover this 06 Michigan football team was because I personally just haven't seen too many people talking about them. And when I was casually looking over the 2006 college football season, I was a little shocked to see how good the Wolverines performed. I vaguely remember that year from my childhood. The only thing that registers is Florida winning the Natty against Ohio State. But when taking a closer look at the 2006 college football season, it could have very well been Michigan matching up with Florida. But I don't want to spoil too much of the video. Coming into 2006, the Wolverines were coming off a season that I think most Michigan fans would like to forget, as in 2005 they would begin the year ranked 4th in the country, while also being the preseason favorites to win the Big Ten. Yeah, they would go 7-5, losing to Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio State, and Nebraska. For normal college football programs, a 7-5 season isn't that bad. Shit, if you're a Gators fan like me, a 7-5 season is even considered above average for our standards. But for Michigan, especially back in the 2000s, 5 losses was unacceptable. Get this, before 2005, the last time Michigan would lose 5 games would be in 1984. I'm bad at math, but that's like a 20-year stretch of winning 8 games or more each season, which should paint a picture of how dominant of a football program the Wolverines were before coming into 2006. 2005 was an anomaly when it came to Michigan football, but it was going to be hard to shake off that bad season, as their lowlights would follow them into 2006. Michigan would begin the season with their lowest preseason ranking in the last 8 years, beginning the season ranked as the 14th best team in the country. Not only would Michigan get disrespected in the AP polls, they would also be jumped by Ohio State when it came to the Big Ten preseason predictions, as according to Stats.com, the Buckeyes were by far and away the conference favorites for the 2006 college football season. That was a very short little intro. Now let's take a look at some of the dudes making moves in the state shaped like a mitten. Leading the program in his 12th year up to that point at head coach, we have Lloyd Carr. Michigan fans, I need to know, where do you rank him all time on your coaching ladder? You guys have had plenty of legendary coaches, so I'm curious to see where you rank him. Comment it down below. He also was the last Michigan head coach besides Jim Harbaugh to lead his team to the promised land, which happened back in 1997. At quarterback, the man running the show was Super Bowl champion Chad Henne, who'd have an above-average season, passing for 2,508 yards with 22 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. His season stats were great, but the man on this team was their bell cow running back, Michael Hart, putting together an insane season, rushing for 1,562 yards for 14 touchdowns. He went so crazy this year, he'd finished 5th in Heisman voting. Sliding over to the wide receiver room, Michigan wouldn't have a single guy who dominated the stat sheets. It was more of a committee of wideouts, but the team leader would be Mario Manningham, catching 38 passes for 703 yards with 9 touchdowns. Before we jump into the action, there are 2 players on the defensive side of the ball that I want to shout out, starting with cornerback Leon Hall, who'd have a shutdown season from the DB position, picking off 3 passes as well as finishing the year as an All-American. The other dude was on the D-line named Lamar Woodley, who'd lead the Big Ten in sacks with 12, and would also finish the season as an All-American. This Michigan defense was stacked. To open up the 2006 college football season, the Michigan Wolverines would begin the year with 2 tune-up games versus Vanderbilt and Central Michigan, which they would of course dominate, winning against Vandy 27-7 in a game that their defense and running game controlled, holding Vanderbilt to under 200 yards, while their running back Michael Hart would eat up, rushing for 146 yards. Central Michigan would be even less of a challenge for Michigan, winning 41-10. Get used to me saying this a lot this video, but the defense was outstanding again, holding Central Michigan to 204 yards while forcing 4 turnovers in an easy W. Now sitting at 2-0 on the season and moving up in the polls a tad bit to the 11th spot in the country, Michigan's next opponent was a massive step up in competition, as they would be traveling in Week 3 to South Bend to match up with the second-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a huge matchup that would have big-time BCS implications. Last year, Notre Dame was the first team to hand the Wolverines a loss. You could say the Irish were a big catalyst for Michigan's underwhelming season in 2025. This game wasn't only about prestige and BCS implications, it was also about revenge. Michigan was somewhat going on a revenge tour this year, and the tour's first date was in South Bend. Could Michigan pull off this huge upset?
Stadium, 2 ranked teams with proud traditions matched up on a warm afternoon in northern Indiana.
And Tom, he managed the game so doggone well. Got scrambled out of traffic some, and he was back in form.
The Irish. Play action fake. Brady Quinn with time. Intercepted. Picked off for an easy touchdown for Prescott Burgess of Michigan.
First turnover of the year.
Down and long from the shotgun. Chad Henne's first pass attempt. Under pressure, intercepted. In Duque with a clear path to the end zone. And Duque really took it back all the way. Quinn with a touchdown pass to
His first 2 years as a starter, better than Quinn. Oh, wide open.
wide open down the field. That's Manningham. He got behind the defense. There's one of those guys coming free. And Ambrose Wooden could
It really is.
There's the kick by Ryan. David Grimes fields it. And Grimes fumbles the football, and Michigan has recovered.
Two turnovers.
Olebo and Hart in the I formation. Hart dives for the touchdown. 2.5 minutes. Henny for the end zone. Caught for a touchdown. Merriam. Play action fake. Quinn fires to the end zone. Caught for the touchdown by
For the Irish.
from the shotgun. Brady Quinn goes over the top, and it's picked off.
I guess who?
Burgess, who had a touchdown on an interception earlier. Burgess stopped at the 5-yard line, caught by Raymond. Down to 12:47. Pumps once, Quinn for the end zone. And that's going to be a holding call, won't it? That's the flag.
It should have been, yeah.
Midnight on both sides of the football. Quinn flushed from the pocket, goes back across the grain. Was it intercepted? Yes, it was. Leon Hall picks it off from Michigan. Out of his hand, and he falls on it. And then it's taken away and picked up by Michigan. Lamar Woodley.
He's running out of gas.
Touchdown! He didn't run out soon enough. By Burgess for a touchdown. The Irish got an interception themselves and managed to score after that to tie it at 7. After that, it was all Michigan. And I mean all. Manningham with 4 receptions and 3 touchdowns despite tangling with a tuba at one point. And Raymond McKnight.
Wow, I cannot believe Michigan walked into the number 2 team in the country's own spot and won like this, especially in front of touchdown Jesus. That cannot be good for karma, there's no way. Alright, so Michigan would dominate the second-ranked Fighting Irish, winning in an impressive way 47-21. There's no secret to why Michigan was able to win by such a large margin. Their defense was out here looking like the Legion of Boom, forcing not 4 or 5 but 6 turnovers, while at the same time holding this Notre Dame offense to only 245 yards of total offense, with them only being able to muster 4 rushing yards. When you're putting up elite numbers like this on the defensive side of the ball, your offense pretty much just has to not implode on themselves. And credit to them, because nowadays in 2025, I've seen way too many teams just fumble games away. Not the Wolverines though, led by a strong ground game from Michael Hart, who put up 124 on the ground with a tutty buddy, paired with a 3-touchdown night from Chad Henne. Notre Dame is kind of lucky this game didn't end uglier. I also have to mention that this 2006 Notre Dame football team was not fraudulent at all. I know they got whooped by the Wolverines, but they would finish the season 10-3 and climb their way back to being ranked as high as the 6th spot in the country near the end of the season. After a win against the number 2 ranked team in the country on the road, as expected, Michigan would catapult in the latest rankings, making a jump from the 11th spot to the 6th spot. The Wolverines were slowly starting to get the disgusting taste of the 2005 college football season out of their mouth. Day 1 in the Michigan Revenge Tour had been great, but Blue couldn't celebrate a successful tour just yet, as the Revenge Tour had 2 more stops right after their stop in South Bend. Wisconsin and Minnesota had both embarrassed Michigan last season, and luckily for the Wolverines, they would get to line up both of these teams back to back like a barber cutting up a family. First up in the chair was Wisconsin, and while they were moving and looking around, making it hard for Michigan to give them a proper fade, with the score being tied at 10 all going into halftime, mostly because of Michigan not being able to sustain drives, Wisconsin's mother would pop them upside the head, making them sit still, which would make it easier for the Wolverines to do what they do, holding the Badgers to 3 in the second half while the offense would somewhat wake up, scoring 17 points to win the game 27-13. This one at the time didn't seem too big, but the 2006 Wisconsin Badgers would finish the year 12-1, ranked 7th in the country, and would win the Capital One Bowl against the 12th ranked SEC champs Arkansas Razorbacks. So Michigan had already beaten 2 top 10 teams 4 games into the season. Next up on the stool was Minnesota, but unlike Wisconsin, this game would go a lot smoother for the Wolverines, as they would put up 518 yards of total offense in a pretty convincing 28-14 win over the Golden Gophers. Now sitting at 5-0 on the season and not moving up at all in their AP poll position, staying put at the 6th spot, Michigan was looking like a real threat to make a run at the Big Ten title and make the BCS National Championship game. So far during the year, their defense had looked outstanding, and they've been in control pretty much every game they've been in. With the way their schedule set up, the only other game they shouldn't be favored in was versus Ohio State at the end of the year. So if they could do their job before rivalry week, then they'd most likely set up a winner-take-all game versus the Buckeyes. Speaking of rivalry games, Michigan's next game was against their in-state rivals Michigan State, which they would easily win 31-13 behind a 3-touchdown night from quarterback Chad Henne. Half of the regular season was behind the now 4th-ranked Michigan Wolverines, with only 6 games left to go on their 2006 regular season football schedule. The weather was getting colder, and it was time for Michigan to embark on a 3-game stretch of brutal Big Ten football, where they would be traveling to Penn State and then back at home for games against Iowa and Northwestern. Theoretically, they could afford to slip up in one of these games, but Michigan football demands perfection, so anything less during the stretch would be considered subpar.
Of the Wolverine formation. He releases, and he looks middle, goes, touchdown, Wolverine! Against this defense from this field position, and Kelly. Hard on the run. Still battling his way toward the goal line. They can't break. Here's Hart for an easy touchdown.
On first and goal, it's Mike Hart. Hart straight up the middle. Touchdown! And 4. Steps up. Down the middle, and he's got his man all the way to the 10-yard line. And it's draw Iowa closer. And the kick is up and good. This is all that clock he can use. And then he'll give it to 20. And Mike cuts back inside the 5. Touchdown, Michigan! Mike.
Michigan, a dominant first quarter team, trying to strike first today. Into the end zone it goes, and it is caught for a touchdown. Rivas. So they give it to Hart. Has a hole and has the first down. Out of bounds. 8th time in 9 games. Wisconsin held them to 91 is low total, and that's an easy 3. Touchdown, Michigan. It's a nice lead.
Michigan would go 3-0 through this stretch of conference play, with the most points they'd give up being 10, which came in the first game versus Penn State, which they would win 17-10. Against the Nittany Lions, Michigan would be in control for most of the match, but Penn State did stick around, and they were a good team, finishing the season with 9 wins, but this Wolverines defense was too much, holding them to under 200 yards and keeping them from reaching the end zone until with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Iowa and Northwestern would be much of the same. Good defense from Michigan with a 100-plus rushing yard performance from Michael Hart. And 2, I wouldn't say easy wins, but they were Michigan wins, taking down Iowa 20-6 and Northwestern 17-3. Now sitting with the record of 9-0 on the season and being ranked at the number 2 spot in the country, all roads pointed towards their game November 18th on the road at the number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. Yes, there were 2 games left on the Wolverine schedule, but those games should be wins for Michigan as they were against Ball State and Indiana, 2 teams who finished the 2006 college football season 2 games under 500. So we're going to skip past those 2 games as Michigan would win 34-26 versus Ball State and 34-3 against Indiana, setting up a game between the number 1 11-0 Ohio State Buckeyes and the number 2 11-0 Michigan Wolverines. As you all know, I'm a huge Gator fan and I love the Florida-Georgia rivalry game. It's probably my second favorite, but number 1 would have to be the game. Michigan versus Ohio State just hits different. I've never seen 2 college football programs hate each other more. And y'all already know in this 1 versus 2 matchup, things were going to get chippy and disrespectful. This iteration of the game in 2006 had all the stakes. Big Ten title, bragging rights, and the number 1 spot. There aren't a lot of things guaranteed in life, but one thing that was that the winner of this game would be in Arizona for the BCS National Championship game. Number 2 Michigan on the road against the first-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes.
This is one of the noisiest venues in college football. And finally, we are underway. And it'll go out of the end zone, come out on the 20-yard line. Quarterback, Chad Henne, into the teeth of a tough defense. Henne again, slant, got it, reaching for the end zone. No, wait a minute now. They're the seam, nice throw. They come back with the running back. Michigan strikes first. Throws for a wide open touchdown, and it's Rory Hall. And a spinning move, breaking free, headed for the end zone. Chris Wells. Second down, powering ahead. Great fake, wide open again. Touchdown, Ohio State. And it was all. Got his man down the sideline. Touchdown. They put it in the hands of number 16. 2nd and 7. He's going to wing it again. Gonzalez at the 11. That's always in that timeout. Slant, Gonzalez, touchdown, Ohio State. Short in the teeth of 100,000. First down, and Hart breaks free. 1 man to beat, and he pushes him out of bounds. On the 1st and goal, Hart, touchdown, Michigan. Call your friends, folks. 3rd and 9, and again the blitz is coming. They try to pinch 10 in, hit him on the release, intercepted on the deflection. Alan Branch came back.
with White leading the way, breaking free again. Touchdown, Ohio State. This time, it's Antonio Pittman.
Yeah, if he wins, then he wins the trophy. Steve Slayton at West Virginia.
That's loose on the ground. Michigan. Hart stop, can't be stopped. Touchdown this time for so many big plays the last couple of years for the Bucs. Looking in that direction. Smith has to take off. Dances free now. He'll throw incomplete. And a penalty flag. Smith was going out of bounds. Personal foul. A huge call with 6:49 to go.
Work on the clock.
He's going to fire for it. End zone. Got it. Touchdown. Away from the pressure. Still has to throw and does. Complete. Touchdown, Michigan. Snaps it on 2. Game over. Ohio State will play for a national championship. The Buckeyes.
What a football game. I freaking love making these videos because I have legit never watched this game or seen the highlights, so getting to relive this electric rivalry game was really fun. Michigan would play a great game, but Ohio State was always one step ahead of the Wolverines. The Buckeyes would jump out to an early lead and Michigan would be playing from behind for the majority of the game. They would scratch and claw their way back into the ball game, closing the deficit to 1 score late in the 4th quarter. Ohio State would be in a 3rd and long position with the momentum of the game seeming to fall back in the Wolverines' favor. They would force an incompletion, but a flag would be thrown for unnecessary roughness as quarterback Troy Smith would take a shot after letting the ball go. I'm not going to say it was a bad call because he did get laid out, and it was a tad late, but man, it would have been nice to see what Michigan could have done down 4 with under 6 minutes left to go. Maybe they drive down the field and score the game-winning touchdown. Who knows, just another what-if in Michigan's long history. Ohio State would then turn the penalty into points, putting the game out of reach with only several minutes left in the game, winning 42-39. It's crazy that if a couple of things went different, we could have had a Florida vs. Michigan national championship game. But to be real, I don't think the result would have changed as Florida destroyed Ohio State. They probably would have done the same to Michigan, but you never know. The Wolverines were now sitting with the record on the season of 11-1, and while it was unfortunate they wouldn't be in Arizona matching up against the Florida Gators, they still had to lock back in as they were facing off against the 8th-ranked USC Trojans in the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. I'm not going to cover their game versus USC because I might want to cover the 2006 USC Trojans because they were really close to making the BCS National Championship game. They only lost I think like 2 games, and they were ranked as the number 2 team in the country heading into championship weekend. Anyway, long story short, Michigan would lose in the Rose Bowl 32-18, putting Michigan's final record on the 2006 college football season at 11-2. This year for Michigan was a really fun one. They played in plenty of big games, beat 2 top 10 teams, and were so close to making it to the BCS National Championship game. I feel like because they came up just short, this team gets lost in Michigan's lore a little bit because of the 2 playoff losses in the 2020s and the national championship win in 2023. So I just wanted to show this team a little bit of the love I felt like they deserved. Alright, so I've been wanting to talk about Clemson for a long time on this channel now. But as most of you who watch my content regularly are aware of, I usually only talk about teams who people never really show too much love to. And when you consider the fact that Clemson from 2011 to 2022 won 10 games or more in each of those seasons, yeah, it's pretty obvious why they haven't been covered on my channel before. They're just way too successful. However, I've made the executive decision to say screw it and take a look at one of their teams from that little 10+ year span I mentioned. I'm sure most college football fans are very tapped in with a lot of the Clemson football squads from the mid to late 2010s. But how about some of those early 2010 teams that played a pivotal role in building the gigantic brand we all know today as Clemson football? Specifically their 2013 football team, the team we're covering today. So where do we begin with this 2013 Clemson football squad? Well, I think it's important to mention that this season was Dabo Swinney's 5th year having complete control over this Tigers program. And the golden rule when it comes to college football is to give your guy 4 or maybe 5 years because year 4 or 5 is when the coaches' first recruits become seniors and all of that good stuff. But to be real, I think Clemson already knew what they had with Dabo. As in only his 3rd year as the head coach of Clemson, they would reach the 10-win mark while also having this team ranked as high as the 6th spot in the country, something they haven't been able to do since 1990. He'd follow up this record-breaking 2011 season by winning 11 games in 2012, something Clemson hasn't done since all the way back in 1981, when they would go 12-0 and win the national championship. Which means it would be only natural that this 2013 Clemson football team had extremely high expectations. I'm talking ACC title with national championship game or bust. And when you go back in time and look at the ACC preseason predictions according to ESPN.com, it shouldn't be a shock to anyone that the 8th-ranked Clemson Tigers were huge favorites to take home the conference crown, as well as having the ACC preseason player of the year on their team in quarterback Taj Boyd. This team was stacked, and 2013 was looking like it was going to be the year the Clemson Tigers took the leap into the elite tier of college football programs. Every great team needs a stable of great leaders and players, so let's take a look at some of the dudes who had motion over at Death Valley. Starting with the man at the top, in his 5th full season coaching at Clemson, Dabo Swinney. He had this team playing elite on both sides of the ball, averaging 40.2 points per game, which was best for 8th in the nation, as well as only giving up 22.2 points per game, putting them at 24th in the nation when it comes to scoring defense. What else can be said about Dabo? He's been one of the best coaches since he took over the Clemson program, and most importantly, I have a stray tabby cat that lives outside my house. I feed her and her son every day, and I named her Dabo Swinney. So if that doesn't show you how goated he is as a coach, I don't know what will. At quarterback, this team was led by Taj Boyd, who put together a pretty impressive season, passing for 3,851 yards with 34 touchdowns, as well as rushing for 400 yards with an additional 10 tutties. Damn, bro was ballin', and I feel like we all forget how great he was because of how Deshaun Cosby took what he did and did it even better. Which is completely random, but I've been getting into Berserk recently, and Deshaun Watson would be a great apostle, maybe even a great right hand to Griffith. If you know, you know. Sliding over to the running back room, the team leader was Roderick McDaniels, rushing for 1,025 yards with 5 touchdowns. At wideout, we have Sammy Watkins, who'd catch 101 passes for an ACC leading 1,464 receiving yards with 12 touchdowns. Just a nasty stat line from a pretty nasty player. Before we jump into the 2013 season, there is a beast on the defensive side of the ball I have to show some love to, and that would be defensive end Vic Beasley. Finishing the season as an All-American, racking up an ACC leading 13 sacks. Those 13 sacks are probably the most I've seen from one player out of all the videos I have made. To open up the 2013 college football season, the 8th-ranked Clemson Tigers would be playing in one of the biggest games of the year in only week 1, against the 5th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Sheesh, could you ask for a better matchup to begin your year? College game day was going to be there, all eyes were going to be on this game, and most importantly, the winner would have a firm control over their destiny when it came to making the BCS National Championship game. Games like this are why I made this channel. 5th-ranked Georgia versus 8th-ranked Clemson. Who'd be leaving Death Valley with a W?
Live at Clemson Memorial Stadium in Clemson, South Carolina, where the game of the weekend is about to unfold. Watkins touches the ball first. Picks his way out to the 21-yard line with his special team for the excited to have finally an opportunity. Slip it to the outside again. Peak. Riddell motions out. Taj keeps it himself. Touchdown. They show power high and toss to Gurley. Gurley breaks free on the far side. Foot race, great speed. Gurley won't be caught. It took one play from Clemson. Taj Boyd pulls it away, flips it to Watkins again. Watkins breaks a tackle. Great breakout speed in a foot race. Watkins goes. Touchdown. Oh, my. Goal for the veteran quarterback, Murray. And he hands on a counter, and Marshall all battling toward that end zone. The fullback, and why not? He bailed him out. So Hicks barges into the end zone, and that fumble, ball on the ground. Tug of war underneath. Clemson player has it. Motion. Looking to throw. Daylight runs, bangs toward the end zone, and the touchdown. Footman was hurt, so Webster is forced to snap that ball back to Taj. Perfect. Taj downfield. Caught. Touchdown. Zach midfield. Play action Murray. Throwing, and there's the big fullback Hicks. Look out, he's a load. Ripped the ball free. And a dog runs into his fullback. Slowed the play up, and Gurley breaks free for the end zone. Touchdown! Complete. Headed for the 10-yard line. And a penalty wrong yarder for Velas. High snap, bobble, they won't get it. Clemson football. Slow down tempo offense. Brooks goes in motion, and McDowell spins away, and he's headed for a first and more. settle for a field goal right now. Boyd fires it, dive, no, short of the end zone.
The runner did not step out of bounds. It is a touchdown.
And with 7:40 to go in this game.
Touchdown and an onside kick will be coming. Murray dives into that end zone. Line judge now signals touchdown. Just a huge win for the program. Clemson triumphs over Georgia. 38-35. Many in the crowd stormed the field here.
Wow, what an absolute banger of a football game between Georgia and Clemson that really could have gone either way. But in the end, it would be the Tigers surviving this humongous Week 1 matchup, winning 38-35. Quarterback Tosh Boyd had himself one hell of a performance, passing for 270 yards with 3 touchdowns as well as rushing for an additional 42, with another 2 house calls playing a huge part in this big win. Clemson needed every bit of that big night from their guy, as this Georgia rushing attack was tearing up the Tigers' defense, rushing for 222 yards, averaging 5.4 a carry. But as good as Georgia's rushing attack was, this Clemson offense was just a little bit better, especially in high leverage situations, taking control of this game and running away with it in the fourth, to give the Clemson Tigers their first win on the season. A win this big during the first week of the season is without a doubt going to catapult your rankings, and that's exactly what would happen for Clemson, jumping from the 8th spot to being ranked 4th in the latest polls. Okay, so after that huge win to begin the year, Clemson would find themselves in a nice little cool down game after the emotional roller coaster that was Georgia vs. Clemson, which if you ask me was well needed. Week 2 would see the Tigers matching up against, wait, am I reading this right? Well, I guess I am. So apparently after taking down the 5th ranked Bulldogs, Clemson would be hosting the Bulldogs again. This time though, instead of it being Georgia, it would be arguably the better Bulldogs program, South Carolina State. South Carolina State would give Clemson everything they had. They fought really hard, but at the end of the day, this 2013 Clemson football team was elite, winning a hard-fought slugfest 52-13. 2-0 and moving up ever so slightly to the 3rd spot in the latest polls, Clemson was looking like a real national title threat, and with ACC play beginning soon, everyone around the country was wondering if there was going to be any ACC team that could give this 2013 Clemson squad a run at the ACC title. Clemson was coming up on a 3-game stretch of conference play where they would be traveling to NC State, back at home for Wake Forest, and then once again hitting the road to face off with the Syracuse Orange. Nobody thought Clemson would lose any of these games, but a lot of people were curious to see how dominant they'd look in ACC play.
Shadrack Thornton. Thornton, big hole. Inside the 10. Thornton inside the 5 and driving toward the end zone. Shadrack Thornton, did he get in? He did. Touchdown, NC State. Boyd, wide open man, thrown low. Did he make the grab? Touchdown. Boyd firing for the end zone. He's got Bryant out there. Touchdown, Clemson. Going to Bryant. Back shoulder. Bryant grabbed it over the top. Touchdown.
Little things well today. All 11 guys have to just simply carry out their assignment.
Boyd's going to go deep. He's got Watkins. There's a flag on the play. Watkins behind the secondary and into the end zone. But out of the backfield, this is DJ Howard. And Howard's got a first down and more. Open field for DJ Howard. 75 yards for the Watkins in motion. Boyd keeps it on the run. Diving for the pylon. Touchdown Clemson. 12th play of the drive. Diving into the end zone is C.J. Davidson for his second score, and Clemson tacks on.
8th of the year. Into the end zone. Touchdown, Zach Brooks, defensive coordinator, of his task today. Boyd looking deep. Another man wide open. It's Humphreys again. That looks familiar. Touchdown. He was feeling some discomfort last time we saw him on the sideline. Throw to the end zone. Caught. Touchdown.
Recovery plan.
They're feeling it now. Here's Bryant in the end zone. 4th touchdown pass of the half for Taj Boyd. We're not midway through the second quarter. 40-yarder this time to get him over 300 yards for the game.
Let's keep it a stack. I don't think anyone was surprised that the Tigers would go 3-0 through this early season stretch of ACC play, taking down North Carolina State 26-14, Wake Forest 56-7, and to end this stretch of 49-14 win against Syracuse. Versus NC State, Clemson wouldn't be able to put this game away early like the others, as the Wolfpack had a little bit of fight in them this game, only being down 13-7 going into halftime. NC State had opportunities to put more points on the board, but this Tiger defense had them on clamps all day long, especially in key situations. NC State would go 3 of 16 on third downs, and it shouldn't shock anyone, but you're not going to beat the third-ranked team in the country if you can't execute on third down. You definitely won't be taking down the third-best team in the country when you let their quarterback sit back in the pocket all day watching reels. Taj Boyd would pass for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns in this 26-14 win over the NC State Wolfpack. The other two games during this stretch against Wake Forest and Syracuse would be a lot less interesting, with Clemson dominating both of these teams, winning by more than 35-plus points in both of these games. I swear, if it wasn't for the crab-loving demon himself, famous Jameis, having one of the best freshman seasons in college football history, then maybe Taj Boyd would have got a couple more looks when it came to the Heisman conversation, because his stats were outstanding this season. First Wake Forest, he passed for 311 yards, rushed for 69, nice, with 4 total touchdowns. And to finish this stretch off against Syracuse, he'd won up his previous performance, passing for 455 yards and 5 touchdowns in the 49-14 rout of the Orange. The Clemson Tigers were now sitting with a record on the season of 5-0, with their ranking staying put at the 3rd spot. Clemson had a huge conference game coming up in a couple of weeks against the 5th-ranked Florida State Seminoles, in a game that would most likely decide the winner of the Atlantic Division in the ACC. But before that, there was a trap game scheduled in between versus a very gritty Boston College football team. This game was the definition of a trap game, as Clemson would find themselves down in the second half for the first time in a while, trailing Boston College 14-10 going into the 4th quarter. The panic button was about to be hit, until Clemson would score 14 points in less than 5 minutes to retake the lead 24-14, and from there they would keep the Eagles' offense out of the end zone, winning the sketchy game 24-14. Y'all know what time it is. I already mentioned it earlier, but Boston College was the trap game. And now that Clemson had survived that little obstacle, it was time for one of the biggest games of the 2013 college football season. 6-0 third-ranked Clemson at home against the 5-0 fifth-ranked Florida State Seminoles. This game was without a doubt the biggest one of the week, as College Game Day would be coming to Clemson for the second time already this season. Usually College Game Day tries to only hit one location per year, but they couldn't resist coming back to Death Valley. I mean, how could they? It was a top 5 matchup between two of the biggest brands in college football. This game on paper was looking like it would be an instant classic between two great college football teams. But digging even deeper, the winner of this game would be more likely out of the two to represent the Atlantic Division in the ACC title game. This matchup couldn't have had more stakes. 5th-ranked FSU versus 3rd-ranked Clemson. Only one could leave Death Valley still undefeated.
Winston goes up in the air, reaching for it is Benjamin, touchdown.
Stepped right into it.
They're going to keep it in the air and fumble, scooped up into the end zone. Mario Edwards, scoop and score. Moving the pocket to the right, looks back to the middle, and he's got his man wide open. Mike Williams comes. First down, keep it in the air, and Green this time breaks free. 35, foot race, great speed. Here goes Green, touchdown Florida State. Winston's got an open path, touchdown Florida State. Freeman bounces off, spins, powerful run for a touchdown.
Brought in a big offensive lineman there, Ira Denson, as an 8.
If you were wondering what all the Clemson highlights were during their game versus Florida State Seminoles, I'm right with you. No, for real though, there wasn't too many to go around, as Clemson would get handed one of the worst ass whoopings I've ever seen on TV, losing 51-14 to the Seminoles. The Tigers' offense, which had been pretty elite so far in the 2013 season, just looked like a scout team. Taj Boyd, who'd been lights out all year, would go 17 of 37 for only 156 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions, as well as getting strip sacked for a scoop and score. And on the other side of the ball, the defense wasn't any better, giving up 565 total yards to this Florida State offense. Ugly loss, but to be fair, the 2013 Florida State Seminole football team was the stuff of legend, and were absolutely loaded at every position on the field. It wasn't just Clemson they were blowing out. They did the same thing to every team they played this year. No exaggeration, this Florida State football team has a convo for being one of the greatest of all time. So while obviously at home in the biggest game of the week, you'd want your football team to keep the game a little closer, what are you going to do? You were up against a historical football team. This loss would bring Clemson's record on the season to 6-1, and their spot on the polls would fall back all the way to the 9th spot. Now, the loss to FSU was pretty bad, and since they played in the same division, they would need Florida State to stumble twice if they wanted to have a shot at making it to the ACC title game. I think we all know Florida State wasn't going to lose any games in the ACC for the rest of the year. As a matter of fact, they wouldn't lose for like another 365 plus days. So while Clemson didn't know it at the time, the remaining 5 regular season games on their schedule wouldn't decide if they made the BCS National Championship game, but instead if they'd be playing for a BCS bowl game or not. Clemson would get the salty taste of defeat out of their mouth by railing off 3 dominant performances to end ACC play, taking down Maryland 40-27, Virginia 59-10, and finally Georgia Tech 55-31. 9-1 on the season and only moving up 2 places to the 7th spot, Clemson only had 2 games remaining on their schedule to end the season, both non-conference games. Let's start with the first one, which would be against the Citadel Bulldogs. Now, if they were not playing football against Clemson and instead taking part in the Army fitness test, then I'd for sure put my money on the Bulldogs. But the battlefield was the gridiron, so the Citadel stood no chance as Clemson would tear them apart 52-6. The Tigers had one more game remaining on their schedule, a rivalry game against another great football team, the 9-2 10th-ranked South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, I'm pretty positive that Clemson was locked into the Orange Bowl game already at this point in the season, because they were by far and away the highest-ranked team in the ACC besides the Seminoles. However, this game was a big one for another reason, as the Gamecocks had owned this rivalry game as of late, winning the last 4. Could Clemson put an end to their losing streak on the road at the 10th-ranked South Carolina Gamecocks?
Second and goal. Shaw gonna take off. Got the pylon.
Pressure. That tempo going and slow down any good rush.
Boyd has a man. Got him at the 40. Watkins still on his feet. And Watkins mark in this game. Boyd, touchdown. Shaw on the fade. Caught. Touchdown. 12 of 13 on the season. And he knocks it through. They run the fly sweep. Touchdown McDowell. Clock at 2. Another run. Shaw into the official. Brought down, but they give it to Davis. Powering ahead. Touchdown. The fly from the 26 Humphreys, and it's loose. South Carolina football. That formation. Gonna throw it, has a man. What a play. Wilds, touchdown. Shaw takes an knee, and that'll do it. Well, somebody got the bowl ball, coach.
Clemson wouldn't play their best ball against South Carolina. I find it kind of amazing how they were still in this game until late in the fourth quarter, even though they turned the ball over 6 times, this game to South Carolina's 0. I think that goes without saying Clemson would lose this game 31-17. While the Tigers' pride might have taken a big hit, their spot in the Orange Bowl wouldn't change at all. And for the people watching this video wondering when Clemson would put an end to the Gamecocks winning streak, that would come next year in 2014. 10-2 ranked 12th in the country, the last opponent remaining on the Tigers' 2013 football schedule was a game versus 7th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes in the Discover Orange Bowl. Clemson had not won the Orange Bowl since the year 1981, the season they would go on to win the national championship. So this game versus Ohio State was big, not only because of that, but also if Clemson could win, it would be the first time in program history the Tigers had won 11 games or more in back-to-back seasons. However, getting a win wouldn't be easy, as this Ohio State Buckeye team was 12-1 on the season and was the number 2 ranked team in the country until after championship week when they would lose to Michigan State. So Clemson was going to have their hands full against this Buckeye ball club. Could Clemson cap off their amazing season with the win in the Orange Bowl against the 7th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes?
Third and 2. This is Boyd, and he does it on his own and then turns it on. Tosh Boyd, could he? Yes! What a start! He goes the other way after running option, and watch out for Miller. Oh, he gave a beautiful step and then lowered the pen. Touchdown, Watkins, his 11th of the year. Total so far. Here's the fade, and there's the touchdown. 6'5". Play action. Miller wide downfield. He wants it, and he's got it. Jeff Hireman inside the 10, into the end zone. Boy, oh boy. That's Wilson coming in motion. Play action. Miller downfield, inside the 5. First. And he crashes right through that door. Carlos high, and he slithers through inside the 20. High steps his way inside. Up and over and in. He can run for it. To the end zone he goes. Where Sammy is. Boyd to the end zone. Oh, what an effort by Martavis Bryant. Flag came in. That's a touchdown. touchdown.
Let's see if he didn't push off. Tess, see what.
2nd and 11. Miller throws it up wide open.
First down. Here's Boyd looking to pass, and he goes underneath. Dragging was Sekinger, who had
Throwing back and walking in is Staten Sekinger.
Excellent play call. Sammy Watkins came in.
Beasley off the edge. That's a fumble, and it is snatched out of the air by Spencer. Desperate for a stop on 3rd and 13, and it's intercepted. C.J. Barnett, and they are back in business. Miller. Oh boy, what a game! Stephon Anthony is going to seal this deal. With Stephon Anthony, the interception with 1:18 to play, and take a bath. Brent Venables.